Welcome to Bermuda National Gallery. It gives me such great pleasure to be greeting you this evening as Executive Director of Bermuda National Gallery. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's artist talk. And welcome to this evening's guest artist, Rana Begum, and her family. Rana, thank you so much for agreeing to share your creative process with us. Rana Begum is a multimedia artist based in London, and she has such an impressive resume, with highlights including being elected to the Royal Academy in 2019, and a long list of solo shows, awards, and residencies. One of her pieces, entitled Number 861, is on display in our current exhibition, Simplicity of Form, Unfolding Abstraction, and it holds pride of place on the wall to your left here. This is on loan from the Green family, and we are ever grateful for their unwavering support of Bermuda National Gallery. Rana's currently in Bermuda, having been invited as the Hamilton Princess and Beach Club's latest artist in residence. You'll know that the hotel boasts a remarkable art collection featuring contemporary artworks by some of the great names in modern art. One such artist is Rana Begum, who currently has 2 pieces on display at the Hamilton Princess and has been commissioned to create an original piece for the hotel inspired by both the resort and our islands. We have a rich history of artists visiting Bermuda for its unique quality of light, so it's fitting that Rana, who says that light is fundamental to her process, should be visiting Bermuda now to continue expanding her practice. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you that all of BNG's exhibitions and programs are completely funded through community support, via memberships, sponsorships, donations. So if you find our programming, such as this evening's event, engaging, I encourage you to support Bermuda National Gallery. Take out a membership, gift a membership to a friend, or make a donation, or simply spread the word. Your active involvement is crucial to all that we do. A big thank you to our team here at BNG, our Director of Exhibitions, Eve Gaudette-Thomas, Lara, Rihanna, as well as our former Executive Director, Peter Lapsley, all of whom have been instrumental in organizing this evening's event. This is Rana's first trip to Bermuda, and as recounted in today's full-page spread in the Royal Gazette, she's loving our island. I'm so glad she's experiencing the warmth of Bermuda and her people, and I now invite you to give a warm Bermuda welcome to Rana Begum.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and also for having me here. It's great to see the work in situ in this beautiful exhibition. It's amazing finally being here in Bermuda. Alexander Green has got quite a few of my works, and it's fantastic to actually finally see some of the works in situ, and to be here and kind of really taking in the sea air and being out in the open. It's incredible. I mean, it's hot, but we're absolutely loving it, and it's going to be difficult to leave. I thought it would be good to kind of well, with abstract art, it's really difficult to understand or find a kind of connection, and I thought it'd be useful for you to kind of see where my work started and how it started, and so the narrative might kind of help connect to the work, if you like. So I'm going to start from quite early on. This is my studio when I was at art school, and the reason I include this in a lot of my presentation, because this is actually a good example of things that are right and things that are wrong about the process that I was going through. So I started off as a figurative artist, and an artist that I felt was kind of interested in the figure, the representational. But actually, when I first got introduced to people like Judd, LeWitt, Agnes Martin, Frank Stella, I was just immediately drawn to their work, but I couldn't understand why until I went back to my work and looked at my paintings and drawings that I was doing, and what I observed was how much I was kind of trying to capture moments of light and form and, all these kind of things interacting. And I realized that I needed to find a way to kind of understand abstract art. So I started making a list of things I was interested in and excited by. And immediately that list kind of was quite abstract, so line, form, colour, light were things that I was interested in. And the minute I could kind of look at the list and realise I needed to kind of hone in and simplify my kind of research. And initial research was light and form. And even though in this kind of image you could see I was also trying to kind of look at colour, but it was not working. And so I removed colour completely and decided to look at light and form. And I got very excited because for me it gave an opportunity to kind of explore material, explore surface, explore the way the light was interacting with the work throughout the day. And so a lot of this body of work was kind of working with material like wood, card, ply, and it was kind of very relief-based for years. And then I think it was in the second year of my master's that I decided I was ready to explore colour. I was ready to kind of take that leap. But I needed a material that would give me instant kind of results. And I recognised I wasn't very good at mixing colour, kind of mixing paint together to create a new colour. So I abandoned paint and used ready-made materials like adhesive tapes and vinyls. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of make mistakes and explore kind of relationships between colour and how even like the thinnest strip of colour could make a massive difference to the overall experience of the work. And then I felt I was kind of ready. I think it was a couple of years after my master's, I was ready to kind of bring those kind of two research together. And I was looking at material that I could kind of explore those kind of ideas. And also at the time I was kind of interested in the idea of the infinite. And I also wanted to make huge works, but being petite, it made it really difficult, and also I've hurt my back, so it made things really difficult. So I needed to find a material that was lightweight and possible for me to kind of play around with. And I came upon kind of extruded aluminium that could easily be powder coated and glued and cut. And so this was a material that gave me a lot of freedom and allowed me to kind of really, really explore scale in a way that I hadn't before. And so this is also a series of work that looked at kind of different surfaces, how it could embody change as well, not just through the way it responds to natural light, but also within the material. So the two materials that you see is mild steel and painted aluminium. And the mild steel over time will react to the atmosphere, will over time start kind of rusting and get this kind of warm surface and textured surface. And I was kind of looking at change in a different way that isn't the most kind of lasting. And I think the difficulty I remember having at the time was, do I make, large-scale works that has to then get destroyed because I can't store, or do I make, do I avoid those kind of scenarios? But I kind of continued and took that risk, and I think if I hadn't taken those risks, I think it could be quite limiting, so it was important for me to kind of continue to kind of push myself and see where the work takes me. This is a series of work that is still, I'm continuing to produce in the studio. It's an ongoing series that really informs new strands in my work. It started off as an exploration of movement, and I was thinking about how the viewer could walk past the work and notice something new about the work each time. But what I hadn't anticipated is in the centre that you see the work is the mixing of colour. And I had a bit of a panic because I knew that, mixing paint wasn't my strongest kind of, side. So I thought, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. But it was too late for me to take this work out of a show. I'd originally made this work in a studio that was like 2.2 metres high. So it wasn't, the studio walls wasn't tall enough to install and check if I'd got it right. And so I could only see it the first time in the gallery. And but it was a really exciting mistake, I would say. I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, but it was an exciting moment where initially I thought something had gone wrong with the work, but actually it opened up a whole new world, in a way, in my work. And so this kind of colour mixing, I just went wild with it. So you can see on this left-hand side of this work, you've got kind of fluorescent red and orange and yellow. And then when you go on to the other side, on the right-hand side, the three section on the right, you can see the original colour top and bottom and in the centre. And the rest is all colour that's being just reflected onto each side. And I think someone once kind of said that my work has kind of dual experiences. And that was something that I think now has kind of stuck with me. And I love the fact that it can create these moments of kind of quite vivid, strong reaction to something that's kind of quite calm and quite meditative and quite subtle, and I really like those kind of experiences. I mean I've never wanted the view to hold the viewer's attention, forever. I think for me, what's really interesting and exciting is if the viewer keeps getting drawn back in, if they're walking past the work and there's something that, they notice each day, and it's kind of questions, there's kind of surrounding and the way they're looking. And for me, that's what's really important. Oh, if you have any questions, please ask. I know that I kind of carry on talking about the work. This is another series of work that I started as a way of looking at geometry for this series of work. So I started folding paper, and as I was folding paper, it took me back to kind of early research point where I was looking at light and form, and so I then thought, actually I can use these as studies for colour. And the more I worked on these paper pieces, the more the works became themselves. And this series of work is still kind of ongoing, and I'm still kind of discovering new things about this series, and it's still kind of find it exciting. This is a series of work that I started actually during my residency in Bangkok in 2006. And in that residency, I had kind of gone there wanting to explore the perimeter of the work and breaking away from the hard edge kind of geometry. and which is really difficult for me to do. I love the squares, I love triangles, and I love rectangles. So when I found this material in a hardware store, I was really excited about kind of the possibility of pushing certain things in my work. And one of the things that I was also looking at the time was repetition, and how repetition can be used to create this idea of the infinite. And so this is another piece. So after I came back from the residency, I wasn't able to find similar materials or have the budget. So I think until 2017, I had a large-scale commission that allowed me to then explore this material and geometry in a more kind of, in a way that I hadn't thought about. I love how these kind of materials play with light, whether it's natural or artificial light, and how they shimmer and how they kind of really change the way that you experience these works.
What is the material?
These are actually reflector tiles that's used for either cars or bikes, so they refract light. This is a series that you probably recognise. There's one of these works actually in Hamilton, and this originally started off in paper. So I have moments in the studio where I need something else to happen within the work, and whether something that's kind of more organic or fluid, or something that's kind of really is very different and in contrast with what I'm working on. And so in this case it's made of paper, and I had kind of folded A4 paper up into grid and then unfolded it and then scrunched them up and then unfolded them and then sprayed two colours from top and bottom, which when you install it on the wall, it really picks up the kind of the undulation in the surface. And so this body of work has been kind of translated in jasmonite, so it's cast jasmonite, and then same kind of process where it's kind of painted from two different directions. This is kind of a painting series where it's different, looking at kind of, again, light and colour in a different way. So these watercolour studies were from my residency in Tate St Ives. And again, you know, the light there is incredible, and I had a studio that overlooked the sea, and every day, I mean, when you sit in front of the window, I mean, it was just so dramatic, the change. And I wanted to find a way to kind of capture that change. I took time-lapse videos, I kind of played around with material, and I still wasn't able to do that. And then I started doing these kind of watercolours that overlapped and created these kind of third, fourth layer of kind of colours. And this is a series that I did when I was travelling in Durban, and again kind of looking at kind of colour and light and movement. This is again a series that started from the bar works that I was showing you earlier, where the colour interaction were happening. And I kind of wanted to look at, I didn't want any other interaction, I wanted to kind of focus on the colour interaction, and this series has been kind of developed into kind of larger and larger scale, and looking at colour interaction on a flat plane. This is a series of watercolours that I started during the pandemic. I was struggling to kind of, I mean, my children will be here, and apparently I didn't help them at all with their schoolwork. But I was really struggling to kind of deal with homeschooling, and I needed to find a way to kind of calm myself down, and I thought, I can't scream anymore. And so I started doing these watercolours, and there would be moments where I'd be interrupted by questions, and and Aisha or Jibril needing help. They didn't apparently need my help. But those interruptions created a narrative or created that kind of rhythm, and you can see the kind of the stop-start. So the darker colours is when I then kind of picked up the brush again and started. And that was really, I just found it so meditative, that working with the grid, working in this way. And at the time I was also looking at Agnes Martin's work, and her kind of move to New Mexico and why she moved, and it kind of really it allowed me to kind of get through the pandemic in a way. So these watercolours have now been, the image on the left is what they've kind of become, so quite physical and much more tactile. This is a series that again started in Tate St Ives. It's amazing how much work I can do in a residency when I'm away from the studio. I grew up in Bangladesh, and I used to go fishing a lot. I love the kind of the structure, the net structure that's that you see in Bangladesh, and it's quite vivid in my mind, and so it's a material that I've been desperately wanting to work. And I had the opportunity when I was in St Ives. There were fishermen studios below my studio, and I was able to acquire some material that I could then spray and play around with, and almost kind of draw physically on the wall with this material. And so this series has kind of, in a way, I've gone wild, and I've kind of just got really excited and loved how I can kind of pull and stretch and create these kind of layers in geometry. And so that's the last piece I made in Dubai at Concrete. This is a series of work that I started originally in Bangladesh. I was asked to produce a work for Dhaka Art Summer in 2014, and they had a budget, and one of their requirements was to use materials, locally sourced materials. And I, as a child growing up, I used to weave baskets with my nanny, and I just remember that kind of process, and I wanted to kind of use that material. So I can't remember, I think almost 900 baskets, the original. And what I hadn't anticipated was how structural the material can be. And so I started kind of putting these baskets together and just kept using cable ties and creating this space that allowed light to kind of filter through. And it was this kind of recreating these kind of experiences that I had as a child growing up in Bangladesh of light. This is the third piece I made was in Cambridge for Kettle's Yard. This is actually a series where this is actually a commission for a health centre in the UK, and I was given the entire health centre. Initially they just wanted artwork for the waiting areas, and I was like, I used to spend a lot of time in hospital because my father was quite ill, and so I spent years kind of taking him back and forth, and I knew what it's like waiting in the waiting area and thinking the worst. And what I used to find really helpful and calming was if there was artworks in those kind of spaces. And I think it was St Mary's Hospital that had a lot of artwork, and I remember actually being there with my dad thinking, it's so great to be able to kind of look at art and distract yourself. And so I produced these Duplo, using Duplo Lego interactive walls. So the part that's yellow and white is permanently glued, and the white and blue in the corners is that you can take apart and recreate the pattern or make something else. So these are some of the... But the reason I'm kind of included it in this presentation is because I love using ready-made, accessible and recognised materials to create these kind of geometric patterns and which kind of leads you onto these. It's something that's kind of tactile, something that can be touched, and this was quite important for this project, where I used to kind of make journeys through even as a child, and I'd see like families walking through, and I wanted to create something that people could run their hands over and touch. And so this is again using reflector tiles and responding to activities in the space. These a series of work that I produced during my residency in the Philippines, and I had 2 weeks there, and I had access to these incredible workshops, and I could use any materials. No one ever said no to me. I would come up with ridiculous ideas, and I was like, okay, this is a time for me to really make mistakes and push certain aspects of my work. And so this is using roof tiles and stacked up roof tiles, and I was trying to see how high I could go before it collapsed. I'm not a structural engineer, but I really like the idea of kind of pushing certain side of my work. And so again, it's the same roof tiles that's been painted and kind of positioned so that you could create movement without the work having to move. This is another series of work, again looking at movement on a kind of flat plane. So I was also asked to create some work for Kunst, and I looked at kind of materials that was locally available. And Kunst originally used to produce actually tiles, and so these were some leftover tiles that they had on site that I was able to use to create this work in the water. And then I made this kind of 300-metre long path, and so this was actually conceived during the pandemic, and I was interested in how people could navigate through the space. And obviously during the pandemic everyone's kind of trying to avoid everyone and not be in close contact, and so these kind of offshoots of geometry are positioned so that people could let other people pass, but at the same time it was also to kind of take in the views of the sculpture park. So this is a series where the prints kind of come from, and I started these because I was always struggling to kind of explain the excitement that I have with the bar works and how the colours interact, and I really wanted to make that interaction tangible. So these started off as studies for works that were much more physical, that you could really interact with, and you can see how the colours mix. And so this series is ongoing, and it's still kind of pushing certain aspects of my work. This you'd recognise is part of a series of work where sometimes it's using natural light to create movement, other times it's using artificial light to create movement. And this is actually also a collaboration with the musician. So I've been in a fortunate position where I could collaborate with engineers, architects, designers, musicians, and I love those moments because I think it allows you to look at your work in a way that you haven't, through conversations you discover things about your work that you haven't been able to. And this was a musician that I don't really like listening to those kind of, it's electronic music. But he kept pushing me and he kept saying, no, I really want to collaborate. I really want us to kind of do something together. And I said, okay, fine. I gave in at the end and listened to his album and actually got really excited. And the more I listened, the more I could pick up on the certain sounds and movements. And so this work kind of really reflects that. This was a commission for some beach huts in Folkestone, and that was a fun project. It was exciting, and again, it was in the beachfront, and I wanted to create kind of movement along this journey that people would be making. And that was kind of exciting how it might, not knowing if it was going to work was also quite scary, but it was great to finally see it kind of come together. This is a series of work that I started, again it started from Bangladesh, and it was through an experience I had where my father had kind of left some land that he donated, and my siblings and I had to kind of go back to Bangladesh and sign the land over, but also we had to go to the registry office to put our thumbprint. And the minute we walked into the registry office, the entire office, there was 2 rooms at the back and the entrance, was just covered in fingerprints. And so every time obviously someone had put their thumbprints, it's just wiped on the wall. And it was just this incredible moment of connection between body, architecture and land. And I felt kind of, it gave me goosebumps, and I really wanted to kind of explore movement through this series of work. And so the first time I produced this work was at Shilpakala Academy and connecting, I think, 3 levels. This is a series where it's actually again started through accident. We usually have to kind of check the consistency and flow of the spray cans each time we paint. And so we used to kind of pin up these papers, and for a while they used to be thrown away, which now when I think back, I get really upset. But at one time I'd kind of said, just hold on to these, and we held on to quite a few of these and put them up. And the more I looked at them, the more sculptural they became, and I wanted to find a way to kind of bring these kind of images out into the physical space. And so these works are now kind of more they're kind of more in the physical space, but you can actually walk around and you can really kind of feel your body kind of connect with these works. And so this is another one that's been done outdoors. That's been a challenge, actually. The location that it's in, it's a wind tunnel, so it's kind of really extreme. So it feels like this, cloud that's kind of floating. There's a little video. I love the way kind of, it doesn't matter what the weather is like, and it's so dramatic. Every time I've been there, sometime it'll be like really bright and sunny, at other times it'll be rain, pouring down with rain. but I just love how it kind of responds to those kind of elements. So this is in London. It's City Island. It's part of the Limes art kind of trail. And then this is a series that actually stems from the basket installation that I'd done. After I came back from Bangladesh, I wanted to find a material that would allow light to kind of filter through, but also would allow me to use colour. And the minute I started kind of playing around with these work, it actually took me back to the moment where I was exploring colour and how I was exploring colour. So it was quite an exciting kind of moment with these works where just looking and studying colour again and the interaction. This is a large-scale installation that I did in response to those work, and it felt like a drawing in space. So as you walk around, I don't have a video of this work, but as you walk around, colours would appear and disappear. This is another one that I did. So I've made, quite a few of these, and they've now started kind of going outdoors. This is a project, one of the most recent projects that I've done for part of Desertex in Palm Springs. And again, I did kind of a recce of the location, and I actually went over with my family. And we flew to LA and then drove to Palm Springs. And the drive to Palm Springs was incredible and really inspiring. And the more time I spent there, the more I realised that I was seeing kind of barriers and fences everywhere. And I wanted to find a way to kind of use this material. I loved the way how it captured light. I loved how it kind of appeared and disappeared in the light. And so this is kind of the result of this material. It's result of this material. And the structure is, as you go inside, the paths start opening up in terms of height. So the layers actually start raising up. And so it just so as you get in, it starts opening up. So when you start walking through it, you feel quite claustrophobic, it's quite intense. But as you walk through, the way it opens up, it kind of flips the experience, really change. Don't know why it's not playing anymore. But yeah, that is the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.